uh, have a
Wow,
the
that's beautiful.
definitions that we use. But that's fantastic from my end, and it's always what should I say, very challenging to face up to uh, intelligent, energetic, and youthful co-panelists or paper presenters, because then your own age is exposed. Having said that, if you'd allow, then I'd like to go into my presentation. Okay,
Would you mind if I intervene just briefly?
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
please.
I just wanted well, first of all, I want to say, like, thank you. That was a very detailed and rich ethnography of the situation, and you've done a great job of getting well acquainted with everything that's happening on the ground there. So that's fantastic. But I have to admit that I sort of missed the through line on your presentation. If and when you told us what your purpose was, or why you chose this particular scenario, I kind of missed it. So I might just give you the feedback that reminding people like me who are very interested in hearing what you have to say, what you've told them and why you're telling them. Just a tip that I think I would have benefited from as your audience.
Okay. Yeah. So, uh, shall I respond? Yeah. So yeah. So our interest was in two ways. One is to understand how this commoning process of uh, transferring the unwanted work to some collective, or something that we want to call as collective. So and how those people who are collectivized, so these groups are, of course, they come together and form a collective, but there is a force, external force, which is the state, which is creating this kind of a structure. They are governing those structures, and also saying that, okay, fine, you have to do this work.
Okay,
We,
wonderful. Thank you so much. That helps a lot to understand why this is such an important case.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
It is. And I believe that those of us who come from South Asia have an inherent tendency to uh, to seek out others who have worked in the development space around us. Because I come from Bangladesh, and I believe that when I was growing up with the Kerala model of development. That was something that used to be taught in our texts.
Okay.
So that was something that we had been experimenting with as well in Bangladesh. We had the microcredit models. I believe that some of us might be familiar with the microcredit models that
Yeah.
had come in before us. And much before, 100 years before, the great Bengali poet Tagore had done something with the collective farms and aggregate farming procedures, mechanization of farms, and also microcredits. So that was almost 125 years before. That was also part of East Bengal at that point in time. So all over India, I believe that there have many things which have been experimented with, from Afghan border down to Myanmar. There have been a lot of experiments with the way that we perceive, conceive, and see life and living and livelihoods around us. So from there, and also from something that Sarah was speaking about just earlier in the keynote presentation, mutuality, that how each productive force reinforce the others. I mean, that's one way of looking at things. It's not exactly what she had said, but that's how I see to it, that each productive force finds its own meaning and own expression in the time and space in which it chooses to operate. So this paper is not as thorough as it should have been, because I believe that if you speak about South-South and triangular cooperation, if you look at the definitions for it, it should take a couple of 100 pages. If you could just start writing the definitions and all sorts of papers which go into it. But what we have done is that we have done a little bit of a broad brushstroke type of programming into the existing narratives and tried to find an alternative framework of cooperation and resource mobilization. Why? The question is, why did we do that? As the through line, as Rashid was saying, because we always speak about international and transnational corporations, international financial sectors, and the United Nations, World Bank, all sorts of multinational and international bodies and supranational entities and authorities. We always speak about South-South cooperation whenever that there is a talk on international development, but particularly with the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, up ahead, because we have already crossed the MDGs line, and the SDGs coming up ahead, it's often difficult to find out where the starting point is, what the end state is. Definitely, the end state is the SDGs, but with 17 major goals and more, close to 200, that's how I'd like to put it, close to 200 objectives, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly where things are and exactly what is needed to reach up to that level. Now, in terms of global wealth, disparities, or let's say disparities in income and wealth across the globe, it's pretty difficult to find, in my understanding at least, that what should be the ideal course of actions for states, for countries, both rich and poor, in terms of developing the whole planet as one human ecosystem. So there are 5 questions, of course: what, when, how, who, and why. Of course, if there's anything to be done, why? And if we are not personally satisfied with the answer that why we have to do something, then there must be some problem either with the system or with us, but at least one party is at fault. So let's begin. The future is already here. It's not just evenly distributed. That's how I almost always start my presentations, that we already see the future. We just probably don't know exactly where it lies or in which proportions it does. Now, I'd like you to have a look at this page. Those of you who are from the Indian subcontinent might be knowing at least one of it very closely, and maybe every one of us has seen The Wolf of Wall Street or The Irishman, for that matter. Maybe I'm just extrapolating, and I should not be doing that still then. And The Art of War and Neuromancer. That's a book you may or may not have had read, but that's a book that I grew up again reading, and that was something that we used a lot in conceptualizing the ideas of the future, and particularly the ways of the artificial intelligence and cyborgs, and then all sorts of science fiction mechanisms. But since the chat GPT-4 and 3 and 4 both, I believe that people who used to discount science as fiction or fictions as science have really been thwarted to a great degree. So I'd just like you to have a look at this page and keep it in mind. There's there's something that I had added while listening to Rajeshwari's excellent presentation, that there is something known as Cassandra's curse. Can anyone tell me what Cassandra's curse is?
I think we might not be seeing your slides as you're describing them. We're still on the page that says South-South and triangular cooperation. Have you been clicking through?
Yeah, I have been putting through, but actually, let me stop share and then again. Okay. Can you see this now? Can you see the next slide?
Just the cover page.
First slide, that's it, yeah.
Only the first slide.
Yep.
That's bad. Can anyone help me? What might be happening over there?
Would you like to share? Is there a link that you could share to this presentation and I could try screen sharing it?
I can send the presentation, but that's a big one. Let me just
if you send it via email, I can open that up.
It might also be the case if you log out of Zoom and log back in that it works. That worked for me last time I had a problem like this.
Okay, let me then log out and log back in. Okay.
Okay.
Reset the whole application. Don't just log out. Reset the whole app.
Okay, fine. And I wanted you to hold on to a picture of this page. Did you? Could you? Could you have a look at it now? Those of you who cannot read Sanskrit or Hindi for that matter, this is, can Rajeshri tell me what it is?
Manusmriti.
Manusmriti. Now, since Rajeshri has an inherent bias, if you'd allow me to say so, that it is mistreated by many as Brahminical, but for me, I consider this as a great book of wisdom to understand what the way we, in the many ways in which we grew as a civilization, as a species. The Art of War, Neuromancer, The Irishman, and The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, there is something which I had included, this Cassandra's curse. Can anyone tell me what Cassandra's curse is? That when we are actually thinking of something and the other person, we inherently think, we think that the other person knows about it, but well, he or she may not be knowing exactly what we are thinking, and then it is Cassandra's curse. Like the old princess of yore, Cassandra, who used to see the future, but nobody would believe that she could see the future. The paper that I'm speaking about, I'm not going to detail out the full length of the paper for particularly one reason, that although it's more than a monograph length of paper, but I don't want to bore you with all the details of the financing and other things. I'd just like to have a look at what the idea of the paper is and why we had done it in the first place. The idea of the paper is leveraging on the existing narrative arcs, defining the range of cooperation between South-South and South and triangular South-North, mostly cooperations, propose an alternative framework of conceptualization of how we see the South-South network coming up, and the ways forward towards more business-like approach, if we could bring in, because as I was speaking about that, the SDGs are coming up ahead. We need to find more resources, and if not more resources, at least more creative ways of looking at resources, all the existing resources, and see how we can leverage those to achieve those ambitious development goals. And also the food fuel funds, and some say that these days we add the fertilizers. So food, fuel, funds, and fertilizers, the 4F of existential problems that all South-South and other conceptualizations try to address. The 4IR, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and 5IR. That's the 4IR and the 5IR. That's somewhere, although these are all concepts still, there's no theory behind it yet. And I personally believe that we will not have enough time to go for even empirical level assessments of theories to form. The way that theories used to be formed, let's say Friedman's theories, Keynesian models, they had enough time to experiment, or let's say at least articulate the ideas and couple them with mathematical iterations of models. But the way that things are evolving, I personally don't think that we'll have enough time to come up with solid theories with solid theoretical basis and absolutely foolproof mathematical considerations. It will at best be conjectures. That's just a thought. You could hold on to the thought, and maybe we could discuss it a little bit later. The core docs that we had discussed or we had sifted through were the Buenos Aires Plans of Action, New Directions for Technical Cooperation, the 2003, 2010, and 2016 documents, repositioning the UN development system to deliver on the 2030 BAPA plus 40 outcome documents, which came up after the first conference 40 years before, and the triennial comprehensive policy reviews. That's on South-South cooperation. You can find all these documents on the UN's website for South-South cooperation. These are hefty sets of documents with all sorts of creative ideations and also wishful ambitions and aspirations. And there's nothing wrong in it. I don't find anything wrong or flawed, or it's just that it's good in itself, but it's difficult to conceptualize as to how, unless it's if Gramsci was alive, probably it would have been done by now, but things don't really move in exactly that proportion. Whatever that we wish that we could do, we don't do it, or we can't do it. I don't know why. Lust or greed, or maybe power configurations, technology, the pouvoir, technology of power, or biopower, whatever. There are so many ways of looking at things. Things don't get done. That's the point. So we have gone through these core documents, and to form a baseline, of what we have. But here we have something of a definition that where we begin. The definition says something like South-South cooperation is I'm going to read it out. South-South cooperation is a common endeavor of peoples and countries of the South, born out of shared experiences and sympathies, based on their common objectives and solidarity, and guided by, inter alia, the principles of respect for national sovereignty and ownership, free from any conditionalities. That is that is the core definition of South-South cooperation. And then when you add a northern country to it, then it becomes South-South-North cooperation. But there is certain reality checks that happens. Now there is something known as the bottom of pyramid markets, the bottom of the pyramid, the whole economic pyramid of the whole world, and maybe less than 2 or 3% of the whole world's wealth is held by more than 50% of the global community of people. Now that's a rough estimate, because how we would like to conceptualize wealth, that is also a fundamental question which we have tried to address in this part of the paper. And there is something known as the institutional voids. We are blessed with a whole bunch of problems, legacy problems, governance issues, and structural flaws that particularly the countries in the South, Rajeshwari comes from India, maybe others are coming, maybe some of you might also be coming from the global South. I come from Bangladesh, and we are overburdened with institutional voids, flaws in political, legal, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal uh, issues in which our institutions fail to meet up to the demands, even often fail to conceive the demands as it should have been by institutions of that magnitude. That I'm holding an office, if my office knows exactly what it is supposed to deliver as public goods or as public commons, these are problems that we face. Evolution of the state systems, the origin of the state itself. That's the third area, that the origin of the states was always debated. There's always more than one theory of what states look like, how they started, and there are many reasons for which states could have had started in the first place. That the countries that we know as sacrosanct, what if they are not exactly what they look to be, and what if they don't remain as what they are currently looking at, or currently what they look like in next 10, 50, 20, or maybe 100 years of time. Evolution of the development and welfare concepts, that was something which Sarah was also speaking about. And there is something that I would like to draw some parallels upon, because Sarah was speaking about the mutuality of the economics and economic forces. And here, when we are speaking about the definitions, what I see is that what we have experienced over the last 2, 3, maybe 4 decades is that a serious developmental discourse evolution has taken place. It's not only capitalism versus socialism or Gramsci or neocon, neoliberal economic orders, things like that. No, the way that we perceive wealth, the way that we perceive income, except for maybe the cash denominations of it, even cash itself is also changing with the introduction of cryptocurrencies and digital currencies and coins and whatnot. So these things are taking place. So there is a host of changes which are happening pretty fast. When you look at last 200 or 500 years of recorded history, we have reasons to believe that in the last 20, 30 years of time, maybe last 10 years more, the rate of change is faster. Now, if that's faster or is exactly what it is used to be, that's a debatable question. So these days, whenever that we are speaking about theories, we prefer speaking about conjectures rather than saying that this is a theoretical postulation, maybe ideas. Fact checks, even in terms of creating resource pools for South-South cooperation in 2016, I was just referring it, I am not a pure academician. I'm a practitioner myself. I hold an office in the Foreign Office. So I was having a discussion with the Foreign Minister about some of the things that we're working out with. So now, let's say, just an example, we are in Tokyo and we're in Japan. Japan is a first world developed country. It's the second largest economy in the world, or maybe third largest economy in the world at this moment. Now, between Bangladesh and Japan, what are the similarities? What are the dissimilarities? Now, are the similarities and the dissimilarities based on the conception of the state that we have, or based on the ideas and expressions of ambitions and aspirations that we have as countries and communities and as societies? Now, these are serious questions. Now, but when you look at the global south, the 48 LDCs received a total of $38 to $42 billion per year in 2017 terms, while SDGs require somewhere at the range of 5 to 11 trillion US dollars. Poverty eradication itself requires in 2017 terms, and the calculations could be different from different perspectives, but these are the calculations that we have used for the government of Bangladesh. We have used several data sources. One is, of course, the United Nations Comtrade and other systems. We also have a Bangladesh government data set, and we also have data sets which is independent of either of them, which we have collected from the open sources. Hunger, this data is from the Economic Relations Division from Bangladesh government. Hunger requires $169 billion, healthcare 248, quality education $205 billion. Bangladesh alone needs, a country of 160 million, alone needs $445 billion in 2017 terms per year. Well, having said that, what is it that we're looking at? The way that we see to it, we are looking at competition. We are looking at serious competition across several fields, players, levels, and layers. These four ideas: the fields, players, levels, and layers of economics, and the actors of the economy, and your competitors for resources, your competitor for markets, your competitor for buyers, your competitor for supply chain solutions. This competition is emerging very fast. So we're looking at a world which is denominated by competition and competitive forces, and what we need is a strategy for the global south to survive, to sustain, and to grow in a digital era. Now, what is the digital era? I was listening very carefully to what Sarah was speaking about, the freelancers, and what those freelancers are. These are not just freelancing cabs or programmers. Freelancers could be adjuncts as well. And what sort of freelancing is going on in? What is the gig economy looking like? What are the skills? What are the expertise? What are the markets? What are the suppliers? What are the sources which are deployed in this whole spectrum of economies? So this is, we call it in a brushstroke as digital era, but maybe it's something more than that. I am not sure if you have watched this movie called Alpha Player One or Ready Player One. I forgot the name of the movie, but it just reminds me of that. That what would be the nature of that world which is coming up? Would it be a cyberpunk world, or would it be a dystopian world? Would it be a utopian world? Of course, we'd like to be in an utopian world of some sort, but I wonder what the nature of that world would be. But key words which I would like you to take note of is competition, strategy, and the digital area. What we have found from our paper, I'll do one thing, we'll share the whole paper with you, the entire range of paper, the full paper with you after this presentation. What we find is that in the paper, or in our effort to find out some commonalities and some similarities and some dissimilarities, what we see is that there's some sort of gaming at play. We have competition, we have conflict, we also have some convergence of issues and of interest. And in general, what we have is a corrosion of confidence in the institutional architecture, in the institutions that we have. So the whole set of institutional epistemology, the narrative arcs defining, every community, every society, every country, every state has voids. Some voids are deeper, some are lighter, but the institutional narratives fill up the voids. They create as bridge, as arcs from one end to other, to another, for the individual to find a reference point. But that corrosion of confidence has taken shape. There is a good paper by Sigmund Bohm that's about the fluidity, the liquidity of the modern institutions. I'd like you to have a look at it as well. There's one paper which is coming up from our end next month, where we discuss heavily on the ideas of the corrosion of confidence in the modern institutions. Now, what we have done is, I'll tell you, to cut a very long story short, what we have seen in Bangladesh, a very strange phenomena has happened, has taken place. Now, you might say that since you're a government officer, you are trying to promote your government. No, I'm not. I am also a researcher. What we had been writing about 20 years before, or maybe 15, 18 years before, some of the very big organizations, international financial organizations and others were simply brushing us off that no, nothing is going to happen. Everything depends on the, Friedman model or things like that. Supply side economics was almost missing, the demand management, the big terms, but essentially 50s or 60s terms. That was something in which the country was, judged, adjudicated. And all the things that we were asking for was like survival, basic survival. We were surviving on microcredit, less than $100, you survive, and you keep sustaining in that. From there, something else happened in 2009, 2010, after 2008 elections, that the country started taking a sharp upturn. So what it used to be, it's no longer that. Bangladesh used to be a fledgling basket of despairs, and people were leaving the country en masse, almost en masse. Anyone having a university degree would be very much happy to go abroad and settle there and never look back. That kind of a despair was there. Suddenly something else started happening. And what has happened in last 14 years of time, of course, the government will take credit for it, and it's of course due for it as well. The leadership, the honorable prime minister, she gave the leadership, and of course she deserves that. But there's also a theoretical aspect to it. Something else happened, and what happened? We tried to find some insights into that happening, and we wanted to see if we could replicate that model across the global south for solving some of the problems, particularly in the funding and the other institutional mechanisms. So there's a little bit of a fact check on Bangladesh. I'd just like to go through a little bit of the story of Bangladesh so that you know why I'm choosing this, because not many countries have done this. If you look at it in last 50 years of time, only how many countries have graduated from being an LDC to a developing country status? A country of 160 million, I don't think there is another of this magnitude in last 50 years, breaking free from the vicious clutches of poverty in exactly 12 years time, 12 to 14 years time. Yes. How did that happen? From absolutely endemic poverty to a space where we are not dependent on resource extraction, but pure distributed mechanism of economy and economics. How did we cross that threshold? That is something to be seen at. So I'd just like to give you some figures. This is something that we use for uh, you know branding the country. So it might be a little bit of a flashy colors. So have a look at it. This was the 200th largest economy, which means it was nowhere when it was established after a very bloody war of liberation. It was a blood-soaked war of liberation in 1971 under the leadership of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The whole country was devastated. 3 million dead and 200,000 women raped. It was like a broken country, completely broken, charcoal. From there, we have come to become the 34th largest economy, and we're planning to become a $500 billion economy this year, and would like to become a $1 trillion economy within 2040. But that's beyond the billion or trillions of dollars. It's not about that. It's about the self-sufficiency that the country has, and also the welfare effect that the human individual at the core enjoys. So now the per capita income, which is, since we have broken through the glass ceiling of being an LDC and a developing country, so we now have a score of 2021 was $1,827. Now it's close to $2,500. Economic vulnerability index is also stable. Human asset index is also stable. So everywhere we have crossed a certain threshold. What happened? How did it take shape? What we have seen is that a couple of things happened. Now there is a host of statistics over there. Maybe we can go through it, but if we just have a look at it, the reason that we have chosen this country is at this magnitude. Not many countries, not many societies have evolved in such a short period of time. except of course if you have discovered petrochemicals or something like that. We didn't. We have simply reorganized ourselves, and by doing so, we have done this. And the things that we see, the transformation, the great transformation which has happened in last 14 years, is something happened between 1971 and 2001, 2010. These 40 years, the country remained more or less at a limbo of some sort of status quo. Then suddenly there was a breakthrough. Now, what kind of breakthrough happened? If you look at it, you'll see that our foreign aid dependency has gone down from 88% to 3%, less than 3%. And that 3% comes to primarily in the NGO sector, and of course, some in the government sector. Urbanization is increasing, and it's becoming much larger. Gross domestic savings has gone up. When I was a university student, let's say a fresher, even not even as a fresher, even as a final year student, many years before, we used to just say that marginal propensity to consume was 92%. That each dollar earned, 92%, 92 cents would be used simply on consumption, on survival. Maybe 8 cents could go for savings. Now that rate has reached up to 25.34% in exactly 10, 12 years' time. We are almost at the top of the food chain for at least 10 global producers in 13 sectors. We're one of the largest in ready-made garments. We're one of the largest in rice production. We're one of the largest in freshwater fish production. And of course, you might be knowing that there are many seasonal varieties of fruits and vegetables in which we're also leading the show. Comparative economic indicators, if you look at it, you'll see that Bangladesh is quite stable as a country, as an economy. In terms of growth projections, you will see that Bangladesh has maintained a very steady growth in spite of the COVID-19, in spite of the Ukraine crisis. Maybe Ukraine crisis had put us in last 2 years under serious stress, but even that stress we could manage quite successfully till date. And internally, essentially internally, we have not gone out crying for help. We have tried to, of course, rationalize ourselves and to see where we end up, but we have not gone out in dire need of help. Why? Because our internal economy is quite stable. Even inflation is also stable. If you look at it, current account, export, import, and remittances, almost everything is on the upswing. In last 2 years, certain things have been, the current account deficit has increased because of the excess payments that we are making particularly for purchasing food and fuel, particularly fuel, which has gone up almost up through the roofs. And of course, the United States dollar is missing, and the Fed is raising its interest rates. So we don't produce dollars. No matter how much we try, we cannot produce dollars. So that's something where we are missing. So current account deficit is increasing, of course, in the last 2 years' time, if you look at it. But much more than that, the export is increasing, the import is increasing, the remittance is also increasing. The remittance is important because one reason is, recently in last 3 months' time, we have taken an IMF loan, which is around 4.5 billion US dollars, which we'll get over next 3 years of time. And every month we get close to 5 billion US dollars in remittance alone. So that kind of importance it has. So the whole package of IMF remittance, IMF help that Bangladesh will get over the next 3 years is equivalent to 1 month of remittance that we have in the country. So remittance is very important for us. In fact, there are 4 things which are very important for us as a country. And I'm just giving a background so that you know why we have chosen this. Agriculture, ready-made garments, remittance, and the 4th one is ICT, the Information and Communications Technology. In fact, that is where we're heading towards in this paper. Bangladesh has been cited as an economic miracle by many organizations, many individuals of repute, and countries, and all the country ratings have treated us as stable economies as late as December 2022, and we're up for review pretty soon, even this year. We're heading towards the middle of the calendar year, and the financial year has is going to start in next 2 months' time. So the meteoric rise of Bangladesh, these are statistics. So one thing that is important about Bangladesh is that it has a huge youth bulge. To look at it, The median age of the country is 24, or maybe some say 25. But imagine this, a country with 160 million people, half of it is below 23, 80 million people below 23. So the country is expected to enjoy a very strong demographic dividend over next 20, 30 years of time. That will not stay for a very long time. It's not going to stay indefinitely. But for next 20 to 30 years of time, we are going to have this demographic dividend. Having said that, that's one part, women empowerment, gender mainstreaming in Bangladesh under the leadership of the current Prime Minister, particularly the current Prime Minister. Women are everywhere. Now, Bangladesh is not new to women, because in the Bangladeshi societies, almost like any Bengali society for that matter, have a predominantly women bias, if you allow me to say so, in the way that we construct ourselves, our narratives, because most of the families are driven by the not matriarchs, but women in the family. So women have always been there, but now it's rationalized, it's streamlined into the institutional architectures that we have. People of authority, people of power, people of position and social status, if not caste, at least of social repute and of a hierarchy, it's no more completely male dominated. In spite of being a mostly Muslim country, most of the people of any sort of authority in this country are women, across judiciary, across the legislative, across the administrative, and even in the military. So women are there. And the Prime Minister has been there. Prime Minister herself is a woman for 14 years, and over the last 50 years, almost half of the time has been ruled, Bangladesh has been ruled by women prime ministers. And that's not something very new for us. And for us, it's like normal. But when we're discussing this thing with others, maybe even in very developed countries, having women in leadership positions is still a rarity in some of the countries. Bangladesh, out of 10 green factories, 7 are in Bangladesh. Bangladesh now has 173 green garments factories, the highest in the globe. And the middle and affluent class MSc population in Bangladesh is rising up to 17% of the population soon. So there is a host of statistics that we can blame ourselves on. So we blame this progress on digitalization of Bangladesh. What we have tried to find is what happened which did not happen earlier, or we had not seen earlier, and it helped us build something out of essentially nowhere. We have reasons to believe that it is the digitalization of the economic spaces, not only one space, many spaces, which have created a sort of impetus in the way that we conceive ourselves as a country, as an economy, or as a system of productive forces. If you look at it, you'll see that in when the government came to power in 2008, it had come to power with an agenda of digital Bangladesh. When it started, the digital Bangladesh concept was a big concept, but specifics was not really that well articulated. But over the years, like any other ICT project, like any other design project of any sort, it started acquiring its shape. And in next 14 years till today, Bangladesh has achieved literally miraculous achievement in ICT. And it's something based on people's power. The common people, the ideas and ideations, dreams and designs and productive capabilities of the human individual have been harnessed to create systemic power advantages. That's what we have found. And we believe that's very important for the whole world, particularly in the global south, to mobilize resources, because not all resources ought to be in cash. Something else could be there, because cash is not going to be found. That's one of the hypotheses of our paper, is that cash will be difficult for us to find, for anyone to find. So we'll have to do without cash. So how do you do without cash? We have to find ways, imaginative ways to do certain things. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of all the promotional materials which we have over here, because I think that would take away time. But what I'd focus on is this. The answers lie in the spaces created by shrewd engineering of the context and challenges of Bangladesh economy. What we have done is that we have tried to nurture our biggest asset, human resources. And these human resources are deployed across farming, the primary sector of economy, the secondary sector of economy, construction, and for us, RNG is very much in the secondary sector, and also the service sector, the tertiary sector, connecting the unconnected. The whole country has literally been brought under the broadband, the cable system, and bringing higher accountability, transparency, and efficiency to government. Because bureaucrats like me earlier used to be completely unaccountable to anyone and everyone, but at least one toolkit, one toolbox has been utilized, has been deployed. TCV, time required to get a service, costs associated with that service, getting that service, and visits required to a certain government office or a public office. This TCV complex has been used as a toolkit. And we find that very interesting because that creates an impetus, except for the reward and punishment. In spite of that, or let's say beyond that, it creates an impetus for the systems to work and operate. Key areas for future development that we will not cover because I think we're not exactly in the right time frame. But this is something that this is where we believe that we find a solution. What is that solution like? What we find is that, okay, so we're running short of time. ICT, ITAS, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, private equity, fintech, all these things are emerging. And this has created unsettled spaces across the globe. In these unsettled spaces, what we have is, for particularly in the global south, institutional voids and inchoate demands, not incorporated, it's just a typo which I had done. Inchoate demands that you know something, you want something, but you cannot really articulate. But that articulation can be done if we know how to articulate that. And how do you articulate that? By creating design ecosystems which can support your productive ambitions. And innovation and entrepreneurship is coupled together in a strategic business framework where we have remittance, investment, philanthropy, expertise, and networks together to solve the primary vortices of food, fuel, and finance, and topped topped up by something known as the TMO framework, Technology, Markets, and Organizations framework, to create something known as the minimum viable innovation engine. That's very similar to minimum viable products, MVPs, but this is MVIE, minimum viable innovation engines, which create a system of demonstration, impact, and dialogue. That we create something which we can demonstrate, and then we see how it's impacting the society and the economy, and then we create dialogues. Where we are heading towards is a dialogue. What we propose in that paper, in the paper that we are discussing, is what we have seen in Bangladesh is that it is doable. In spite of the severe resource constraints, we had done certain things, and the results speak for themselves. What if we could replicate these dialogues across the globe, across the South? Maybe we can come up with something. And the reason that I said that the Sarah's talk, particularly Gramsci's and Eleanor Rostrom's talks are very important for us is because all the things which, or many of the things which these economists of repute have discussed, we have practically done it, knowingly or unknowingly, because that's one other thing. We had a great ambition to begin with in 2008 or 2009. The Honorable Prime Minister had articulated the ambition, but we didn't know exactly what we were heading towards. It was not a huge plan, book with which we had started. What we have come up with is 14 years of experience, and we have tried to articulate that experience in our paper, in a small paper that we have, to see that what if it could be a call for action across the global south, that okay, here is something that we have done and we have broken free from the clutches of vicious poverty, and what if we can all do it together? The idea is that create a factor market to consumer market connection across and in spite of the institutional voids and inchoate demands, and deploy the complementary asset portfolios. Whatever assets that we have, try to connect these dots and create institutional and architectural innovations, and create a finance and feedback loop to address the core problems of climate change, adaptation, constrained resources, and in general, wealth and income inequality globally. We have tried to create a strategic business framework for Bangladesh, and this is something uniquely probably at this moment true for Bangladesh with this triple A model inserted very carefully inside the framework, the adaptation, aggregation, and arbitrage, but connecting the consumer markets and factor markets. And there is something, 116 seconds, okay? There is something known as the visions and reality, the timelines. So we have a timeline which leads up to 2100 as a vision. Disruption to finance and markets and ratings, these are all very much important for us. And yet, all the more, whatever that we have done, it's a question of identity. And particularly with the AI rising very fast, the human autonomy and human franchise, particularly with regards to political, economic, and political economy areas, this becomes very much valid. And there are 10 trade-offs that I'd leave you with. It's truth versus falsehood and plausibility versus possibility. But these are certain things which have become issues to discuss. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about the paper that we have. The fundamental idea is create a dialogue which we can use to bridge the institutional voids and the deficiencies that we have in our systems. Here is something that I've quoted as the last slide, that there is something known as the Samudra Manthana. At the very beginning of time, everything was churning, everything was being churned in the sea of milk. And from the sea of milk rose many things, some good, some bad, but all interesting things. Two very important things which came out from it was Hala Hala and Amrita. Something which is life-giving nectar, Amrita, and the other one is Hala Hala, absolutely destructive poison. Maybe we're going through that kind of a time globally. And what comes out of it will be determined by the intent and also the actions that we take. So here we are at the end of my presentation. Maybe since time is little short, so I'll be there for questions and answers if there is any. And here I am, or here we are.
Sessions. And I see, okay, thank you. And I see Simi is back. And so so we've seen a lot of themes from yesterday and today. Like, great conversations about, creativity, mutuality, sharing, and DEI and belonging, and what does belonging mean in public sector, private sector, and several conversations about healthcare. And there was a conversation today also which veered into healthcare, conversations about burnout, conversations about how healthcare sector is organized around what principles, what gets prioritized, and different kinds of themes here. And I would like to also now invite Simi to share her observations of the 2 days. And then we are going to have some breakouts where I would like for all of us to take the time to reflect on, join any group that you wish to, and reflect on what is, which is like, what is the current state of mind that you have? What is the current state of art or state of organizations that you see? And what if, what would you change? What would be the possibilities? And what wows, like what have you been excited by in the sessions that you've attended in the last 2 days? And what do we do now? What now? Like, given that you've been in community with people, and some of you will continue this journey with us for the next 2 days, what now? And so before we go into the breakout, I would like to invite Simi to share her observations and being part of the conference.
Thanks, Lata. More than anything, I'm energized. I hope that's the same for you. Because a lot of time when I go to academic conferences, we kind of hash theory after theory, and we talk about these things in a very clinical manner. But I think last 2 days, what I saw was a personal commitment and personal investment into what we are talking. And hearing that from people who are committed to making these differences and living that, I think that has been my biggest take away from this. So I've got a kick in my butt now, and I have to get up and do things now. So that's my biggest takeaway. And also knowing that how the same kind of issues manifest in different kinds of contexts. So we talked about healthcare. I just came out of one about built environment, and the issues are very real. They have parallels, but in each context, we have to address this and put thought to it, be mindful about it, find solutions that work in that, and be inclusive of people, be inclusive in the solutions. I think that has been probably the common theme for me. But what we would love to know from you, it's what has been your takeaways in terms of your expectations coming in, and what you have learned from that, and how will you carry this on in your practice? Because I'm sure there are other people who are thinking like us and who are in the same path, who are trying to address similar kind of questions. So if we can find people to travel with in this journey of ours, I think that will be what we, both Lata and I, will want out of this conference. Something actionable, some people to do it with. So that is the intention of having this breakout rooms, where you can have these conversations a little more, and then we can come back together as a group and see, okay, where do we want to take this together? So with that, I'll stop. And are there instructions from Jacqueline to how we are going to do this?
I just created 4 rooms, and kind of like open the rooms and join any group that you want to, and so have a little 15-20 minutes of sharing your experience in the conference and the sessions and your passions. And because we've had actually multiple sessions, but also rotating audience means like some of the sessions have been less attended than others. And I want an opportunity for all of, and some of the sessions that we couldn't attend because they are kind of going simultaneously, I want an opportunity for folks to also get to hear from each other and know each other and connect. And then when we come back, we can have a collective conversation and close this conference, or at least the online portion of the conference, and then we'll pick it back tomorrow at 9 a.m. in person. And if you are here in New York City and you have not signed up, please feel free to join us definitely for a reception tomorrow evening. It's available, and just sign up and come and join us, even if you cannot attend the sessions. Join us for the networking reception tomorrow evening. So I'm going to open the rooms for us to gather in small groups.